Keruv Tov, everyone. Keruv Tov. And welcome. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars. Therefore, it must be Zeyde Story Corner. That's right, Zeyde Story Corner. And we are back from our summer break. Actually, we were back last week. And we're back again and again. Yes, year after year. Yeah, that's right, year after year. Been doing this for a long time. So, uh, high holy days are approaching. Yeah, they'll be here pretty quick. Yeah, yeah. Before we know it, it will be here, and yeah, we will be on for the weeks leading up to the high holy days. We will be off during the high holy days, and then we will return after that, just right before the month of Heshvan. So we get a little break. Yeah, we get a little break in there, and which we do every year. Okay, let's see. Who do we have in the chat room? We have Donald. We have Crystal, Veronica, Kelsey Lynn, and lightly attended. Yeah, lightly attended. Yeah. So far. I'm sure other people will be joining in here shortly. But okay, so we left off the last time we were here. We were reading the story about the tailor who wanted to be a cantor, and we left off with a cliffhanger. Yeah, with a cliffhanger, just for Donald. That's right, just for Donald. He loves those cliffhangers, so we left off in there. So let me get you on your camera, and then you can explain where we were at. Yeah, okay, where you were at. Okay, so let us get you on your camera. We'll turn this one off first, and then we'll put this one on. And there we are. I am back on my camera now. Okay, I see Soshi has joined us, and probably Shlomo. So good. We are glad you are here, and we are going to continue on with our story. So, if you remember from last week that we were doing the story about the tailor who wanted to become a cantor. And his employer said, I will send you to become a cantor, but you must be able to charm the animals in the forest, and you had to, basically that. So he goes out into the forest, and he finds a wolf, and he tells him to become a porter, and he traps him. And then a bear comes by, and he traps him by getting his paws into a clamp. And we come to the fox. And that is where we left things off with the fox. So let us pick up there. I'll back up just a little bit, though. Okay, so we come back to the bear here first. Come with me, said the tailor. He led the bear to the village near a mill, where there was a huge round stones with clamps and screws into them. Put your hands into the clamps, said the bear, and I will straighten your fingers so you can become a musician. The bear did what he was told, and the tailor turned the screws until the bear's paws were held tight. Then the tailor ran away. The bear tried to run after him, but he couldn't get his paws loose. So he set up a dreadful yowling. Well, the tailor left him there yowling and ran back to his attic, where he hid and waited. So you remember where we are now, huh? As it happened, a hungry fox passed by and smelled the meat. Approaching the hut, he saw no one was there. But the fox is very sly, and so he thought, shall I go in or not? Still, considering the matter, he opened the door and went in. He saw that there was no meat left, though he could still smell it, and he started to leave. But the tailor hurried down and grabbed his tail. "Fox," he said, "how would you like to be a cantor?" The fox replied, "No, I wouldn't. What kind of a fool do you take me for?" And with that, he yanked himself away so hard that his tail came off in the tailor's hand. Well, that must have been painful, huh? The fox was now without a tail and in pain. He ran off, planning revenge against the tailor. Well, he thought, I can't do much by myself, but I'll get my animal friends together and we'll teach him. The fox met a bird that said, "Why are you so unhappy?" The fox replied, "Because the tailor tore my tail off when I said I did not want to become a cantor." The bird said, "Never mind. There's a remedy near at hand. Dip yourself in the nearby stream, and your tail will grow again." Well, I need to find that stream. Well, nobody's ripped your tail off. Well, just in case. Okay, well, I guess. Better be prepared, huh? Okay, if you say so. Okay, so the fox did as he was told, and his tail grew out again. Then he ran off to call his friends together so that they could get even with the tailor. As he ran, he came upon the wolf, who was unable to move because his back was loaded with stones. The fox said, "What's the matter with you?" The wolf replied, "The tailor has turned me into a porter." The fox laughed. "Ah, fool that you are! The tailor is a cruel fellow, and this way is his way of to keep you from eating him." With that, he untied the sack of stones and took them off the wolf's shoulders, after which they ran along together. As they ran, they came upon the bear, that's right, the bear, who stood with both his forepaws clamped between the millstones. "What's the matter with you?" they asked. "The tailor has turned me into a musician," replied the bear. "Ah, what a fool you are!" they laughed. "The tailor was simply afraid that you would scratch him with your claws, so he clamped your claws between the stones." They released the bear, and then all three of them ran to find the tailor. The tailor, seeing the animals running angrily toward him, thought of a way to fool them once again. He unbuckled his belt and wrapped his trousers. Oh my goodness, what in the world is he thinking? Then he tied the Torah foxtail to his own naked vadam. He turned around with his bottom toward the animals and began to wiggle the tail. The animals, who had never seen a creature like that before, were frightened. I would be too. My goodness, seeing such a thing. They were frightened and took to their heels until they were back in the forest. When the tailor saw that, he returned to his employer and told him everything he had done. The employer laughed and laughed, and then saw to it that the tailor became a cantor in a pleasant village named Mara Terra. And that is that. So what you think of that story, huh? Okay, was it worth waiting a week to find the end of it? Okay, I hope so. Okay, so this next story is called. Oh, I see Guy has come in. Oh, good to see you, Guy. Okay. This story is called Two Tunes for 300 rubles. Now, there's some music in here which typically would be played along with this story, but I don't have my fiddle with me, so I can't play it. So we just do without. Okay. So anyway, two tunes for 300 rubles. In a small town once, there was a man who had a daughter for whom he wanted to make a match, a shidduch. When a young scholar was proposed to him, he offered 300 rubles as dowry and 3 years of kest, which is a room and board. The terms of the marriage contract were agreed to, and the marriage took place. After the wedding, the young husband lived with his wife at his in-laws' home and continued his studies. When the 3 years were over, the wife said, "We can't keep living with my parents' house. Why don't you go into some kind of business?" "Well, what sort of business?" asked the husband. "Well, my father has a horse and wagon," said his wife. "He'll let you have them, and you can be a trader in the villages." The young man took the 300 rubles, harnessed the wagon, and went off to buy and sell things in the villages. On the outskirts of town, he saw a shepherd tending his sheep. The shepherd was singing a little melody. And then this is where the play comes in. Da 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 da, and so on and so forth. The young husband listened to the tune and thought, "If I buy that melody, I will be able to sell it to the cantor in the town for 3 times what I will have to pay for it." So he got down from his wagon and said, "Shepherd, how much do you want for that melody?" 150 rubles, was the reply. The scholar paid the money without hesitation. Then he got back into his wagon, took the reins in his hand, and called out, "Giddy up!" And so he went on his way. As he drove along, he met a cowherd who was pasturing oxen. The cowherder was piping a lovely melody on his flute. And again, there's a little musical score, ta-ta-ta, and so on. The young husband reined in his horse and thought, if I put the two melodies together, I'll make 3 times whatever they cost me. So he asked the cowherder, how much do you want for that melody? The cowherder replied, I want 150 rubles. The young man slapped his hand against his forehead and cried out, oh dear, I've spent all my wife's dowry and have to return empty-handed. Not a good thing to do, eh? Oh, you guys out there, you probably know this, right? Okay. Just the same, he paid over the money, took the melody, got back in his wagon, and drove off crying, giddy up. And the horse looked back and said, what do you mean by that? Speak Yiddish. What's the matter with you? Okay, let's stick to the story, shall we? Okay, well, I like to add my little bits in there. Okay. When he got home, it was almost dawn. As he drove along, he remembered that a man named Beggars, the tailor, lived nearby. He thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go to Beggars, the tailor, and get him to stitch the two melodies together. Then I'll sell them to the town cantor for twice as much money. When he got to the tailor's window and knocked, Reb Beggars, he called out, open up. The tailor cried, who's that knocking at my window? What's the matter with you? Don't you know it's early in the morning? That's not what it says. I told you, I'm just kind of adding to the story. Okay. The tailor cried, who is knocking at my window? It's me, Moshe, he said. What do you want? Asked the tailor. I want you to do some stitching for me. And he sang. And he sang the first song. Is that it? Asked the tailor. No, he said, I have more. What else? So he sang the other part of the song. Yada-da-da-da-da-da-da. Reb Beggars unwound his measuring tape and heated his pressing iron. Then he cut and stitched and ironed the two melodies. The young man paid him a few groschen, got back on his wagon, and drove home. When he came to the house, he knocked at the door and called, Get up, Sorle. It's me, your husband. I am back. So she got up and came running to the wagon to see what sort of merchandise he had bought. Finding the wagon empty, oh my goodness, you can see what's coming now. She asked, where's the merchandise? I have it, he said. Where is it? She asked. So he sang. Da, 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 da. That's what you brought? She cried. No, he said, there's more. So he sang. Da, 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 da. Hearing that, she ran wailing to her father. I've got to divorce that husband you gave me, she cried. He took the 300 rubles of my dowry and gave them away for a couple of melodies. Her father ran to the rabbi, who sent for the young man and his wife. The rabbi asked the young man, what did you do with the money? Dear rabbi, I made a purchase. What did you buy? So he sang the song. Da, 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 da. The rabbi said, "That's all you brought?" "No," said the young man. "There's more." "What else?" So he sang. Da, 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 da. So what you think happened? And so the rabbi gave her a divorce. What do you think happened? Okay. Interesting story, huh? Okay. This next story, that was a kind of a funny story, wasn't it? Yeah. Maybe not for the young man, but hey, somebody thought it was funny. Okay. This story is called Some True Miracles of God. Once there was a poor Malamed, that's a teacher, whose shrewish wife made life miserable for him. Now don't write me letters, ladies. I didn't write this. I'm just reading it. Okay, so we go on. One day when he came back from reciting evening prayers at the synagogue, of course, his wife poured out a torrent of abuse while she was serving him dinner. Finally, he could take it no longer. "I can't stand your howling," he cried, and made up a bundle containing his talit, his tefillin, his gabardine, and a couple of shirts. He put the bundle in a sack and took up his walking stick. Now, when his wife had fallen asleep, he turned down the lamp, banked the fire in the hearth, kissed the mezuzah on the door, and he left home. During the night, his wife woke and saw the door was unlatched, and her unfortunate husband was gone. She concluded that he had left to bathe before saying his midnight prayers. Go to the mikvah, huh? As the Malamed went on his way, a snowstorm blew in on a strong wind. With the snow and the wind in his face, he began to freeze. Maybe he was up there in Canada with Shoshi and Shlomo. What do you think? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, we'll see. So, he began to freeze. After a while, it was impossible to go on. Evidently, he couldn't catch a moose. Just read the story. Okay, I'll read the story. I'll get to it in my time. Okay, I don't think anybody out there cares that I'm adding to the story. Okay, we find out. Okay, so he sat down for a rest for a half an hour. But the wind blew colder and colder. Finally, he got up and went on his way, praying to God that he might come upon a settlement soon. This time, as he walked, he lost his bearings and reversed his direction. He thought he was going forward, but in fact, he was retracing his steps. Since the wind now blew at his back, the Malamed was grateful to God for coming to his help. But he continued to wish with all his heart that he might come to a village. Walking quickly, with the wind's help, he did arrive at a settlement. All the houses were dark except one, in whose windows a gleam of light shone. And that house was his own house. But the Malamaid didn't know it. He went up to the window and knocked, calling, "Please, please, won't you let me in? I'm a poor man frozen through." Now his wife recognized his voice at once, but she pretended she did not know him. She let him in, made up a bed with a warm feather comforter near the stove. The poor fellow undressed and thanked God for his mercy. His wife put out the lamp. An hour or so later, she took her place beside him, and before he knew it, the Malamaid felt himself to be truly fortunate. He had a good bed, and more besides. When he woke in the morning and looked around and saw that he was in his own home, in his bed with his own shrew of a wife, he laughed out loud and said, "Blessed are the ways of the Lord." I guess he learned his lesson, huh? Okay. So we are going to take out a break right now. We take a 6-minute break, and then we come back and we tell some more stories. What you think, huh? Okay, so everybody stay tuned, and we will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay, just as promised, huh? Okay, so we are going to start a new section of stories here in this book, the Yiddish folktales. And these stories are about the Tzaddikim. They are mostly Hasidic stories. And you will notice that in these stories, the stories tend to be a bit short. And they usually just talk about one single incident that happened to a Tzaddik. So, we get this out of the way so that you understand what is going on. Okay. This first story, I love this first story. It's one of my very favorites of all time. Okay. This one is called Shabbat in Paradise, or the Sabbath in Paradise. Okay. Once there was a Tzaddik who was on a journey somewhere. I think his name was Reb Elimelech. Well, he traveled and traveled, but couldn't seem to get anywhere. Since the Sabbath was creeping up on him, Reb Elimelech sent his shamus, his assistant, to look for the right road. Several hours went by, and still the shamus did not return. It was getting dark. So Rebbe Elimelech began to pray with great passion, the way such as Tzaddik does. His prayers resounded to the heavens. Just then, he saw a man coming and felt a bit better, because it meant that he must be near a settlement. The man approached and asked him if he wanted to spend the Sabbath with him. To which Elimelech replied, "Well, why not?" The man warned Rebbe Elimelech that when they got where they were going, he must not ask questions. In fact, no matter what he might see, he must not make the slightest sound. Well, as you can imagine, he had no choice but to agree. They went on their way, and Rebbe Elimelech saw a wonderful palace in the distance. The man took him up to the door and opened it. The room inside was so beautiful that Rebbe Elimelech's eyes were dazzled. Then he heard music that seemed to be played by a fine band of klezmer musicians. And it was so lovely, it almost overwhelmed him. The door opened, and several prayer quorums came in and began to sing with radiant faces. An old man whose gray beard reached his chest moved forward and recited the Sabbath service in such sweet tones that he seemed to be entirely transformed. Rebbe Elimelech was sorely tempted to ask him who all the people were, but remembering what his guide had told him, he said nothing. As they finished their prayers, the old man was given a golden goblet of wine. With smiling eyes, he received the wine and blessed it. When he was done with the blessing, a woman's voice was heard to say, "Amen." Later, Rebbe Elimelech was led into a room even more beautiful than the first. He was seated beside other men at a table that had sparkling place settings. As for the food, the first bite sent a rush of pleasure coursing through his limbs. When the meal was done, everyone at the table sang once more. Rebbe Elimelech was tempted again and again to ask what sort of place this was, but always he stopped himself, remembering what he had been told. Now, a while later, his guide came over and said, "Follow me. I'll show you where to sleep." As he walked after the men, Rebbe Elimelech wondered whether he ought to say something now, but he restrained himself. The room into which he was led was so fragrant that he fell asleep at once. It seemed that only a few hours had passed when he heard, as if in a dream, the singing of many birds. It was morning, and his guide soon appeared. Handing him a long shirt, he told Rebbe Elimelech that it was time to go to the bath. There he saw the man with whom he had eaten the night before. When Reb Elimelech descended into the bath, he couldn't feel the water's touch. That's how blissful it was. Later, he went back to pray and heard the same melodies he had heard the day before. Then it was time to read from the sacred book, the Torah. And it occurred to Reb Elimelech that now, since Torah readers are called up by name, he would learn who his guide was. But when he heard them call out, Morienu Moshe bar Amram, our teacher Moshe, son of Avram, the sixth portion, he felt himself trembling. The next name he heard was David HaMelech, King David. Then Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. When he heard Avram Avinu, our father Abraham, being called to read the portion of the week, he was completely nonplussed. He wanted to say a few words to Avram Avinu, but he restrained himself. Later in the dining room, they ate and sang. After that, Moshe discoursed on the Torah, revealing such secrets as the Rebbe Elimelech had never even dreamed of. The assembled company listened attentively, their faces bathed in light. At dusk, Rebbe Elimelech went to say the first evening prayers. When night fell, the old man, who was the patriarch Abraham, made the Havdalah, marking the close of the Sabbath. And David HaMelech accompanied him with exquisite melodies on his violin. After several beautiful women entered and danced so well that everyone joined in, then a voice called, "Quiet! The Celestial Council of Justice is about to convene." Hearing that, Rebbe Elimelech was unable to contain himself any longer, and he cried out, "Ah!" At once, everything disappeared, and he found himself standing in the open field. And that is it. Okay. Our next story, I told you they were short. The next story is called The Baal Shem Tov and the Herdsman. And it goes like this. The Baal Shem Tov of blessed memory was very anxious to know who would be his neighbor in paradise. One Shabbat evening, when, as usual, he experienced an ascension of the soul, he learned that it would be a man named so-and-so, the son of such and such, or as we would say, Paloni ben Paloni. A complete unknown who lived in a small shtetl somewhere. The Baal Shem Tov wondered what was the nature of the man's good deeds, that he was assured the kind of place in the world of truth which he, the Baal Shem Tov, had been able to earn only by an entire lifetime of sanctity. Well, soon after Havdalah service, he ordered Alexei, his coachman, to harness his horse. He rode off to the town where the man lived and inquired about him everywhere. But it seemed that no one knew him. Later, however, someone did remember that there was a person in the town by that name. Still, the Baal Shem Tov wouldn't be interested in him. He was a herdsman of some sort, a crude fellow, hardly an observant Jew. No, he was decent enough. The Baal Shem Tov disguised himself in ragged old clothes. That evening, at the outskirts of town, on the street where the Gentiles lived, he knocked at the door that had been pointed out to him. A woman opened it and asked what he wanted. The Baal Shem Tov replied that he was a beggar on a long journey and that he wanted a night's lodging. When he was admitted, the Baal Shem Tov saw a peasant's house, complete with white doors and doorposts to which no mezuzahs were attached. Not the sort of place that would make a good impression on the Baal Shem Tov. "Where is your husband?" he asked. "Busy with the cattle," she replied irritably, then flung him a bit of black bread and pointed out a corner where he could sleep. The Baal Shem Tov leaned against a wall, but found that he could not sleep. A little while later, a rough fellow came in dressed like a peasant, with a coat made of pelts that was bound at the waist by a string. He carried a rude stick and a sack over his shoulder, from which a peasant's flute protruded. Evidently the men of the house, the Baal Shem Tov thought. Without so much as a good evening, the herdsman flung down his sack and stick. Then he sat on the floor and demanded his supper. When he was done, he nodded towards the Baal Shem Tov and asked his wife, "Who's that?" The Baal Shem Tov waited to see what would happen. When the man had eaten his bread and some groats, without washing his hands, without reciting a blessing, he took out his flute and played the melody. Then he flung himself down on the floor and he went to sleep. Again, without a blessing. Not even ask whether he recited the... Don't even ask if he bothered to recite the bedtime prayer. The Baal Shem Tov watched with amazement. Well, he thought, who knows? He may be a Lamed Vavnik, one of the 36 righteous. Perhaps he performs his holy work at night when everyone else is asleep. That night, the Baal Shem Tov didn't sleep a wink afraid that he might miss the herdsman's holy labors. But the herdsman slept like a log and never left off of snoring. At dawn, the herdsman got up and tied on his rope belt. He put a piece of bread in his sack and went off to drive his cattle to pasture. Did he wash his hands or recite any benediction? What a ridiculous question. The Baal Shem Tov was more and more perplexed. Just the same, he dressed and stole after the herdsman. In the field, the herdsman sat down, opened his sack, took out his bread. Raising his eyes to heaven, he said, "Lord, I want to eat." Then he broke off a morsel of bread and ate it. That done, he lifted up his eyes again and said, "Dear Father in heaven, thank you for giving me food. I wish there was some way I could serve you, but what can I do? I'm poor and untaught. Well, at least I can play you a little tune." When he had played his flute for a while, the man lay down and slept until noon. When he woke, he said again, "Lord, I want to eat." He ate and played the flute some more. At the end of the day, the Baal Shem Tov, in a very cheerful mood, returned to Medzabush. There he told his disciples the story of the man who could not take a bite without acknowledging the creator of the universe. And later he added, "Well for the man who is destined to be his neighbor in paradise." And there we go, huh? Okay. This is a little bit a strange one. This one is called Yisrael, the Child Rebbe. When the old Rebbe of Stolin, the grandfather of the present Rebbe, passed away, his son, Reb Yisrael, of blessed memory, was still a little boy. Both are now in the world to come. Reb Yisrael died a few years back in Frankfurt am Main, which is why he is known as the Rebbe of Frankfurt. He was, may he forgive these words from where he is now, something of a scamp. Though he had become the Rebbe, he used to chase about all day with other children, making mud pies and playing hide and seek and other such games. But all that to one side, people used to come from all over the world to consult him. He was, after all, the son of the Rebbe of Stolin. However hard they tried, though, they could never find him at home. He was always off somewhere, in the courtyard, in the garden, or God only knows where. One day, a village innkeeper who was very unhappy came to consult the little Rebbe. Moved by some mad whim, his landlord, the local squire, had given the innkeeper 3 days to clear out of his domain. The neighbors, then neither tears nor any such lamentation as would raise the dead would move him. And so, the innkeeper had come to the young Rebbe, who was nowhere to be found. Whenever they thought they had him, he just laughed and disappeared again. The innkeeper hung around for 2 days without being able to talk to the Rebbe. Then heaven itself took pity on him, and the Rebbe showed up in the garden making mud pies. The innkeeper approached and began to pour out his grief. "Woe is me, Rebbe, advise me," he cried. The boy did not answer, but dug holes in the ground and set sticks into them. "Dear Rebbe, what counsel shall I take away with me?" the innkeeper demanded. "You fool," the Rebbe said angrily. "Don't you see that these holes I'm digging?" The innkeeper caught an inkling of his meaning and went back home. There, his wife ran to greet him, crying, "The wicked squire is dead. May his bones be scattered. He was careless as he was hunting and shot himself. We are saved." That's the end of the story. Okay. This story is called The Disciple Who Went Astray. A former disciple paid a visit once to the Rebbe of Ostrowitz. The Rebbe observed that the young man had changed in some way. Something was amiss with him. The Rebbe asked him what had gone wrong. The disciple explained that while studying for his rabbinical examination, he had begun to read secular books, and that they had so absorbed him that he was neglecting his studies. The Rebbe inquired, "Have you read one of those books today?" "Yes," the disciple replied. The Rebbe said, and that's where we're going to stop for tonight. Okay, always on the cliffhanger, eh? Okay, so we are going to stop here for tonight, and we will pick up next week, and we'll find out what the Rebbe has to say about this. Okay, so don't forget the Torah study on Wednesday night with Rabbi A and Rabbi Reuben. And, of course, Kabbalat and Mariv Shabbat service at 8 p.m. on Friday, and on Shabbat morning, Shachrit and Musaf at 10 a.m., all times Eastern, of course. Until the next time, my dear friends, we shall say, Laila Tov.